From Vision Australia, this is Talking Vision. And now here's your host, Sam Colley.
Hello everyone, it's great to be here with you. And for the next half hour, we talk matters of blindness and low vision.
I started thinking in terms of how do biological systems see? How do they get data from the eye, process it in their brain, and then be able to take some action to manipulate the world? And in the process of doing that, I just drifted more and more into trying to answer the question, how do people see?
Welcome to the show. That voice you just heard there was Philip, a retired mathematician and computer scientist who experienced vision loss at a young age, talking about how his work in how robots process visual information led him to ask the same question of humans. His interview with Stella takes up a large part of the show this week, and you'll hear from him shortly. But first, I briefly catch up with Seeing Eye Dog's puppy trainer Paige Coleman to talk about the upcoming puppy games on July 22nd. So if you'd like to find out more, be sure to stick around. And then later on in the show, Francis wraps up the program with a reader recommended. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Talking Vision. We're here to talk about the puppy games today, and joining me to talk about the games we have puppy development trainer Paige Coleman. Paige, welcome to Talking Vision. Thanks very much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Now, firstly, Paige, for those who aren't aware, could you give an overview of what the puppy games are all about?
Sure. So Vision Australia Seeing Eye Dogs and the Pet Barn Foundation have partnered again this year, as we did last year, to have a competition between 4 puppies. So these are Seeing Eye Dog puppies in training. We have Chessie, Frida, Isabel and Ivory, who are participating in 4 or 5 different activities where they compete against each other to see who will take out the gold.
And what will be your involvement with the puppy games this year? I chatted to Harriet Moffat a few weeks ago, and she's telling me all about how her puppy Amy and her friend's puppy Chessie were sort of joined at the hip in some respects as little puppies in the puppy centre. So could you tell us a bit more about your involvement in your pup Frida?
Sure. So my involvement as not only a trainer, I will also be participating as a puppy carer. So I raise Frida voluntarily in addition to my work as a puppy development trainer. So that gives Frida and I a little bit of an edge over the other teams, because not only do I train Frida, but Frida also lives with me. So yeah, we'll be participating not only as carers, but also as puppy and trainer.
Okay, fantastic. And as we know, the puppy games are a crucial part of raising funds for dog guide services at Vision Australia. So could you tell the listeners a bit more about why the fundraiser is so vital in raising funds for Seeing Eye Dogs?
Of course. So Seeing Eye Dogs is a non-profit organisation, and it costs $50,000 to raise just one dog to make it to the point where they are working as a dog guide for someone living with blindness or low vision. So this year, we're hoping to raise $750,000, which will hopefully cover the costs of 15 Seeing Eye Dogs. So that gives 15 clients the independence of mobility and travel, just like I take for granted every single day.
Okay, and this year the puppy games will kick off on July 22nd at 1 p.m. And to watch the games, you can watch the live stream by heading to www.thepuppygames.com.au. Thank you so much for your time today, Paige. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, and all the best for the games in just over 2 weeks' time. And now, here's Stella Glory with Philip.
Philip connected with Vision Australia back in the 1970s when technology was coming to the fore. At the time, an adaptive computer cost the same price as a house, around $40,000. But technology was crucial to Philip's career, and quite an astounding one in mathematics and robotics. And Philip is fascinated with robotic vision systems. I began our conversation by asking him about this.
Okay, well, I guess that came up in a very natural way in one respect, as I was a working computer scientist, mathematician, and I became interested in robotics, and in particular, getting robots to use a camera to be able to navigate an environment as it moved through it. And there's many, many applications in that area. One really fun application at the beginning was in developing robots to play soccer. And so they were very small robots, about half a meter tall, and they had cameras and onboard computers, and you have to program them to see well enough to manipulate the ball and play the game. So in my interest in computer vision, then I became aware saying, gee, vision may be described as a mathematical process. And I then realized that what we were doing in computer vision had basically very, very little to do with biological vision systems, how people see birds, any animal that you care to name sees. And so I started thinking in terms of how do biological systems see? How do they get data from the eye, process it in their brain, and then be able to take some action to manipulate the world? And in the process of doing that, I just drifted more and more into trying to answer the question, how do people see? What does their brain-eye combination do to see? And probably the last 20 years of my professional life, I had really moved over from computer vision to what I would call straight biological vision, in trying to achieve the goal of writing down the mathematical equations that describe vision. Now, I certainly didn't achieve that. Nobody has yet. It will be done at some point. Of that, I'm totally sure. But in answer to your question, it's been a migration on my part from trying to get robots to see, to understand how people see. And of course, the biggest thing I had going for me was my deteriorating vision. So I had a continuous experiment running on asking questions. How do I see what I do see, and why can I not see things that I can't see? And that interplay of my interest in computers, mathematics, science, my vision, my deteriorating vision, and the overall fascination with biological systems all just interacted to drag me into it in the way that I did. Maybe one day I'll be able to untangle that in a more in a more logical, meaningful fashion. But I think that's about the best I can describe it for you, just off the top of my head here.
I know you have an anecdote about this, about people's response to a person who's blind working on robotic vision systems.
Yes. Yes, my dear daughter, at the age of 13 years old, I was invited to give a talk on my research of computer vision and how we got robots to see. And my daughter was asking me about that, and I was really pleased that she was taking an interest in what I was doing. So I went into some detail and, thought she was pretty interested in it. And then after I finished up with my description, she simply said to me, "Well, Dad, that's really weird. Here is a blind person telling sighted people how they see," and really woke me up as to what my whole fascination with this vision game was all about. It just totally crystallized my interest in what really was going on.
And it's not actually that strange a concept, because there are many inventions or possibilities where people with a disability have had to, who have in part designed or developed something that has gone on to benefit the broader community.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's absolutely, as you say, nothing unusual about this or what I just told. And yes, the life is full of such examples that you just described. And I can tell you one other story, which is on that similar sort of thing. When I first began my university study of mathematics, at one of my lecturers, who I went up to see after the first class and say, "Look, I've got this visual disability, and this is the way I do things, and I'm just letting you know. It's no problem, but I'm just letting you know what's going on." And she said to me, "Oh, this is going to be very difficult for you. I mean, it's going to be difficult now, but the more you get into mathematics, the harder it's going to become for you." And I didn't think too much about it, but I went back at sometime a little bit later, and not back, but I went and spoke to one of the few people that I know has my visual condition, and he at the time was a professor of physics in the university. And I went and told him and asked him, "Well, what do you think about this mathematics thing, getting harder and harder for me?" And he just really shook his head and laughed a bit, and he says, "I can absolutely assure you, not seeing will not be any impediment to you learning mathematics, and your vision condition may even be an advantage to learning." And I walked away from that thinking, this is amazing. And I had him as a working example, of course. And so all of the time, this fascination of the things that I'm interested in, my vision condition, they all seem to blend in there in a for me at least, a very fascinating way.
And that concludes the first half of today's conversation with Stella and Philip. I'm Sam Cully, and you've been listening to Talking Vision on Vision Australia Radio, associated stations of RPH and the Community Radio Network. If you'd like to find out more about the program, like where to find your local radio frequency, or listen to past programs, you can find all this info and more on the Talking Vision webpage. Just type Talking Vision into your search engine, or you can find the program on the podcast app of your choice or through the Vision Australia library. And now, back to Stella and Philip.
Do you think that you're lucky to have such a curious mind? Is it your curiosity that's motivating you, or which one comes first, your motivation or your curiosity, or are they the same thing?
Well, I would say neither. I would say that my curiosity and motivation is really a result of some pretty fabulous people that have helped me, encouraged me along the way. And the technologies that have been available at just the right time to allow me to move to the next level, as it were. And all those encouragements from people, and when I say the people, the encouragement, I've known a few totally blind people when I could see a fair bit that were encouraging, and then a few people with my own eye condition, and overwhelmingly totally sighted people that were all very encouraging. And actually, though, I shouldn't dismiss the other end of the spectrum too. Even those people that dished up negative feedback and discouragement, they had their place too to motivate me. But I do have to say on that score, I also feel very fortunate that when I came across those people, they were just enough to toughen me up, but not so much to break me. And so it was that blend of great encouragement and support from people that was able to cultivate the curiosity, imagination, and the belief that I could do the things that.
This isn't to say you haven't had disappointments, and we had a chat a while ago about mistakes. And what type of mistakes have you made, if you could conjure up a couple for us? And what was the importance of, what's the importance to you of being allowed to make mistakes?
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll just take that last part of your question first. And they're absolutely essential in the learning process. That you really cannot learn to operate in this world, be it with a visual problem or not, without making numerous mistakes. So there's nothing unique to visually impaired, blind, visually impaired people. It's essential to learning to be a human being. Now, one was occurred when I was a beginning academic and in a job and wanting to move to another job, and I'd applied for a position which I really wanted. There was a lot of preparation for the interview, had to travel a bit to get to the interview, and all up, it was quite an involved process. And so in the interview, I'd go into the interview and I'm positioned in the interview relative to the interviewing panel. There was 3 people on the panel in such a way that I was out of visual contact for myself. And so the interview progressed, and I was answering all the questions, as far as I was concerned, really well. But I was feeling somewhat uncomfortable about what was going on. I didn't really know why. Well, I did. I knew that I wasn't in visual contact, and there was nothing in my resume that said I had a visual disability. I didn't tell them at the start of the interview that I had a visual disability, and there's no reason why they would have thought that I had a visual disability, which has been the case all of my most of my life anyway. So finish up the interview thinking, I really did well with it, but just that little bit of discomfort. Well, I didn't get the job. I got a rejection sometime later. Totally disappointed about it because I knew that I was the best person for the job in my own mind. I had the experience, the qualifications, everything. And I asked myself the question, what did I do wrong? And I started exploring that discomfort that I was feeling in the interview. And at some point it dawned on me that, gee, I should have declared to them what my visual condition was. I wasn't trying to hide it from them. It just didn't occur to me to declare it at the time, because I would tell people when I thought it was necessary, and I wouldn't talk about it if I didn't think it was necessary. Well, I wasn't aware that at the time that was absolutely important, that I declare my visual condition so that they could make adjustments with the way that they were probably interpreting my lack of eye condition to not being terribly interested, or any number of ways that people interpret in a negative way somebody that doesn't have appropriate eye contact with them. That was a major thing, a major mistake, which led to a very big disappointment, for which it was also a mistake which I learned from and never repeated. And all interviews that I've done since then, I've made other mistakes for sure, but never repeated that one.
Just one final question. Now, since you've retired, you have been devoting your energy and time into writing a novel, and you're also part of Vision Australia's client reference group. So you're keeping quite busy there. Tell us a little bit about the client reference group and your portfolio within that.
Okay. Yeah, the client reference group is just a group of clients from amongst the Vision Australia large population of clients that report to the board of directors of Vision Australia and try to give them feedback on issues from the client base in terms of how Vision Australia is doing, what could they do better, and any issue that comes up. And the client reference group is just something that I got into after I retired. All of my life has been exclusively in employment and taking up all of my time, and I've never done any volunteering. And the opportunity came up in a newsletter from Vision Australia saying that applications are invited for representatives on the client reference group for a portfolio called Older Adults, which was trying to represent people over the age of 65. And I thought, wow, that sounds pretty good. And I then just applied for it and was selected to represent the older adult population, and have been on it for some 4 years now, and have really enjoyed it. And I would encourage anybody, any client of Vision Australia, to take part, to put in an application when vacancies become available for a portfolio of their interest, because it's quite a good thing to be involved in. It's a powerfully important thing for Vision Australia to have people of its client base that are willing to get up and give them feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly of all the things they're doing on. And it's a very fulfilling thing to do. So I can only encourage anybody that just has an interest in that type of thing to get involved. Doesn't matter what your background is. Give it a go. You have something to contribute.
And now, here's Francis Keeland with a reader recommended.
Today's Read Recommended takes us to best-selling author Linda LaPlante and her novel Tennyson. In 1973, Jane Tennyson, aged 22, leaves the Metropolitan Police Training Academy to be placed on probationary exercise in Hackney, where criminality thrives. We witness her struggle to cope in a male-dominated, chauvinistic environment, learning fast to deal with shocking situations with no help or sympathy from her superiors. Then comes her involvement in her first murder case. Let's hear a sample of Tennyson by Linda LaPlante. It's narrated by Julie Teal.
On the return journey to the station, Bradfield stopped at Old Street's Magistrates' Court. Jane waited in the car whilst he spoke with one of the magistrates who, after hearing his information on oath, signed and issued a search warrant for the Collinses' house and car. Bradfield got back into the driving seat and handed Jane the search warrant. "OK, what made you suspicious about the car?" he asked. "To be honest, I wasn't actually sure if there would be a car in the garage." "Just answer the question." She started to explain about needing the bathroom and how she'd gone upstairs because the vicar was using the one downstairs. He impatiently pushed her to get to the point. "At first I went into the master bedroom by mistake, and I noticed a few framed photographs on the dresser. One was of Mr. Collins standing beside a red car, which at a glance looked like a Jaguar. But when I took a closer look, I realised it wasn't. Then I remembered you asking him what vehicle he drove. He said it was an old Bristol that belonged to his father. I'd never seen a Bristol car before today, and it made me think that maybe Eddie Phillips was mistaken."
That was Tennyson by Linda LaPlante. And if you're a fan of the television series Prime Suspect and also the books by Linda LaPlante, the Prime Suspect series, you will recognise the character Jane Tennyson. So after all the Prime Suspect books, LaPlante went back and wrote some books featuring Jane in her early years as a police officer. There's about 3 in the series, starting with the book Tennyson. If you would like that book or any others from the library collection, you can always give them a call on 1300 654 656. That's 1300 654 656. Or you can email them at library@visionaustralia.org. That's library@visionaustralia.org.
And that's all we have time for today. You've been listening to Talking Vision. Talking Vision is a production of Vision Australia Radio. Thanks to all involved with putting the program together. And remember, we love your feedback and comments. You can contact us at talkingvision@visionaustralia.org. That's Talking Vision, all one word, at visionaustralia.org. But until next week, it's bye for now.
You can contact Vision Australia by phoning us anytime during business hours on 1300 847466. That's 1300 847466, or by visiting visionaustralia.org. That's visionaustralia.org.